March 2018, we opened our doors to the public with a vision not just to create challenging professional theatre, but to use this as a platform to inspire and bring communities together. Theatre and culture build identity. With theatre and culture in our local life, the community landscape is more vibrant. Local life is enriched. We believe that the benefits of theatre should be available for everyone. Our Theatre for All programme has removed financial barriers, giving disadvantaged people access to the theatre free of charge.
So we were told that we'd come here and have a Christmas meal and then go and watch A Christmas Carol.
Our aim is to make live professional theatre available to everyone and use that experience for positive change. Theatre can be transformational in young lives. Our academy is now in its 4th year, and we continue to build on our vision of bringing the best performing arts tuition to the heart of the Cotswolds. We work hard to make our academy as inclusive and as accessible as possible. Discounts apply for parents with more than one child. Our bursaries help support talented children from less affluent backgrounds. The Academy creates a fun and challenging environment where children can build friendships and develop key skills not just for theatre, but for life. We are also able to provide real opportunities for students who wish to pursue careers in the arts.
My name is Harry Apps. I am currently playing Marius in Les Miserables in the West End.
Barn outreach and learning programs engage with thousands of people. Our free workshops support the drama curriculum in local schools. Singing and musical theatre workshops in community groups and care homes have helped address issues of isolation. Our Song for Cirencester project in aid of mental health charities brought our community together in an unprecedented way. We've collaborated with many charities in the region, including the Churn Project, to support individuals dealing with the barriers to finding work.
Since working at UN, my life's changed. It's given me some purpose, given me an interest, some confidence I was lacking prior to all this.
The Barn Theatre played a pivotal role in the town's 2018 World War I centenary celebrations. Who could forget our record-breaking Human Poppy? Our live streaming work on the annual Advent Festival helped thousands engage and take part in Cirencester's Christmas festivities. In these times of uncertainty, we strive to keep the community together. The theatre may be temporarily closed, but our commitment to you goes on. Even now, our amazing costume department are helping the NHS by making scrubs for frontline workers. We've used our technology to build a free live streaming service that provides much needed community news and entertainment for all the family. Broadcasting every day to keep us all connected. We are not just a theatre. We are the Barn.
Oh, whoopsie diddly dino. There you are, let's put a smile on your face. But now I'm saying that this morning because look, there we go. I don't know if you see that there. Another broken lace this morning. I'm not going to let that drag me down though. Very easy to let those small things affect your positive stance on things, but not today. Today's Monday. Today I'm pumped. It's been a fabulous weekend in the sun. Got the children out camping at the corner of a field, which was fab. And strangely, I'm really looking forward to the week ahead. Looking forward to the work, what opportunity it brings. And of course, Thursday, Cool Conversations, super special guest. But for now, I need to sort that lace out so that I'm prepared for my run tomorrow morning. So remember, in it together. Let's get it done together. Let's do it. Okay, so slightly different video this morning. I pounded out 12K this morning with Guy. Thanks for that, Guy. Brilliant to be running with somebody again. It really lifted my spirits. But I'm so excited I forgot to do any videos. But lots of people have been asking what I've been running in. These puppies, the La Sportiva. I can't pronounce what they're called, but they're brilliant. There we go. They are absolutely epic. These ones are coming towards the end of their lives. They're beginning to go at the front there, you can see, and I'm worn out in the Hill Cup area. But these have probably done about 1200k. They've been down to South America, been part way up Aconcagua. These things are utterly epic. I can't recommend them enough. Brilliant. If you're looking for a good trail shoe, these are what you should be getting, without a shadow of a doubt. Oh, it's got to be a hell yeah Wednesday! Midway through the week. How's it going for you guys? What are your wins? What are your losses? It's not easy. It's not easy times right now. But yeah, we're halfway through the week, and the key thing on Wednesdays is keep the focus up. Not just a weekly focus, but the focus we have during lockdown. It's a bit like an expedition. Expeditions have loads of downtime, bad weather, bad conditions, and the key thing is to keep the stoke and keep the focus high, because you never quite know when it's time to go. And I think it's the same with lockdown. We need to be ready when the time is right. So let's celebrate Wednesday together with a hell yeah! We're in it together, we'll get it done together.
My mate Kenton has done some extraordinary things in his life, and he's pretty hilarious as well.
We're going to talk about climbing, we're going to talk about sports, hot topics, and we're going to merge all that together for an entertaining 30 minutes. Wow, everybody, it's Thursday evening, it's the Barn Theatre. That can only mean one thing, and the fact that you're here kind of says it all. It is Cool Conversations. This is week, well, I forget now, 7, 8, 9, it kind of merges into one, doesn't it? However, this is the one that I've been so excited about. This man tonight was going to be my first guest, but I deliberately withheld because, I don't know, I just wanted to build the anticipation. Selfishly, I wanted to get better at doing what I'm doing, because this guy, I'm going to say it right now, he's a bit of a hero of mine. I'm a little bit starstruck myself. This is the guy who competed in no less than 13 Tour de France's. This is the guy that has held jerseys in all 3 of the Grand Tours. This is the guy that for a while held the fastest ever average speed ever in a Tour de France. He's got a gold medal at the Commonwealth Games. He was the road captain when Mark Cavendish won the World Championship in Copenhagen. It is none other than the most flamboyant, the stylish road racer there has ever been. It is David Millar. David, you there?
Thank you, Kenton. I think I just need you to be there every morning for me when I wake up.
No, come on, you live in Girona. You must have the best coffee in the world.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do, because we have every single cycling lifestyler in the world living in Girona, I think, now, and professional. And if there's one thing they love, it's coffee. So yeah, no, thank you, Kenton. That's a lovely intro, and it kind of reminds me that I did do something when I was younger. But it's a mutual appreciation society.
Well,
I got the same sort of like.
So we're talking about coffee. Let's how do you take your coffee? I bet being the sartorial, elegant dude that you are, I bet you drink multiple types of coffee throughout the day, don't you?
No, I just double espresso. That's it. Every time. I'm very simple. Americano, double espresso. I don't really, or a cappuccino very occasionally if I'm in Italy or somebody who knows how to make a cappuccino. Otherwise,
you actually know the etiquette behind coffee, which immediately elevates you to a higher plane than most of us. So, but I bet you don't have one of these. Check this out. I don't know if you can see that. I got my own Mr. Cool cup. I don't know if the guys can see. You can't really zoom in. It's a Mr. Man, Mr. Cool cup. That's why I got my coffee in. So you may be the dandy of the peloton, as I've seen you describe once before, but you don't have your Mr. Miller, Mr. Man cup, do you? Oh, no.
I don't. And so many cyclists do, because they get that little design of themselves and put on a cup. It's like,
do they?
bugger.
Oh,
but that's okay. I'm fine.
So come on, tell me, lockdown in Girona, what's it been like? Because you're just popping out now, aren't you?
Yeah, I tell you what's been really strange about it, Kenton, is the fact that it started, so any of the people listening to this who are into cycling, the last race I commentated on was Paris-Nice, which is a big French stage race, an 8-day-long stage race, which finished on March the 16th, I think. And I got back here the evening of March 16th, and lockdown began on March the 17th. And from that moment on, it's been full lockdown. I mean, schools were closed down. Children were not allowed to leave their houses.
Wow.
Full stop. So if you had a garden, yeah, they could go in it. But there are the majority of families living in flats, apartments. Their children didn't leave the houses for 6 weeks.
Jeez.
Playgrounds still. So we've now, and only one person per car. And you turn up to places about 3 weeks in, you had to wear masks. Everybody wears masks now, everybody. The gloves are supplied if the let's say the shops, supermarkets, pharmacies, etc., petrol stations, petrol stations and pharmacies serve you from the outside. They have the gateway for you to do it in. But petrol stations or the occasional supermarket that did let you in, you had to wear gloves. You had to have the mask on. It's been like the zombie apocalypse over here. And so it's so surreal to watch what's been happening in the UK and the States. Because, I mean, we don't really have any idea we won't know for months, years of the gravitas of this, because there's so much data we don't have. And so it's difficult to analyze anything. But seeing how they handle it in Spain, it's quite contradictory to the expectations you have of Latino culture. Because in Northern Europe, we almost at times look down on Southern Europe and think they're a little bit loose and a little bit kind of, they do their own thing.
Is that why you're living down there?
We're now looking at Northern Europe. We're now looking at Northern Europe and going, you guys are loose.
Yeah. So you mentioned that Southern Europe is loose, and you've been living there now for what, 10 years or so?
Yeah, my wife Nicole and I moved here in December 2006, so 14 years.
Yeah.
And we came here originally as a training base, as somewhere to, and that's when we moved here. I think there were less than 10 professional cyclists living here. And since then it's become arguably, and I'd say more and more so definitively, the cycling capital of the world. It's it's where there's over 100 professional cyclists live here. There's now a cycling tourism business. There's lifestyle. There's everything, and it's a positive thing for the town and region. But I've seen that whole thing happen over 14 years, and it's been an amazing thing to witness.
So you are renowned for your style and your sort of on-trend appreciation of what works. So are you loosely trying to say that you were the trendsetter down there? You moved to Girona and then everybody else followed suit, or were you just kind of?
I don't think. I think it's always, isn't it? What was that book years ago? Freakonomics, was it?
Yeah, it could.
And it says there's a great quote actually, which then just going sideways on that. It's Paul Smith. Trends and fashion, I'm not a big fan of. The Paul Smith quote is, we don't do fashion, we do individuality. And individuality is something I've always been very kind of a big advocate of, but individuality is often based off rationale and purpose. And if it makes sense, and often we get wrapped up in the zeitgeist of fashion, And that always ends up in a cyclical nature that doesn't actually it doesn't find its ascending spiral. Individuality often finds an ascending spiral. And I honestly do think that Girona, it was a rational decision to move here. And I was a part owner of a team called Slipstream, and I was the one that instigated that the whole team should live here. And that was part of that initial, the beginning of the ascending spiral.
Yeah.
But it was all done off the fact that we have the best training here. We have the best climate, and just it's a lovely quality of life.
Right,
so although
I was going to say, it must be quality of life in there as well, because by 2006 you were, well, I suppose you were in the middle of your career still, weren't you?
I was on my comeback. So I was on the comeback trail. So I turned professional in 1997. I was banned from professional cycling for doping in 2004. I then left Biarritz, where I lived in the southwest of France, and on the advice of one of my best friends at the time, who's since become Sir Dave Brailsford, he said, come back to the UK and live near where I live and where I base British cycling, because I want to personally look after you and rehabilitate you. And so I went and lived in the Peak District in Hayfield, an area you know well.
Yeah. Very well.
And that's where I kind of rebooted myself during my ban. But as I was coming out of my ban and signing back up and getting back onto the racing circuit, I was like, I don't have many ties in the UK. So I didn't have much reason to stay there. And I wanted to get the maximum benefit from training and be close to teams. So I didn't want to go back to France, went to Tuscany, tried that. Didn't really like Tuscany because it's just weird, which we won't go into. And then a friend of mine, Christian van der Velde, who's a professional cyclist, lived in Girona. And that was part of the Lance Armstrong kind of residue, let's say. And I was like, you know what? I don't even know where Girona is. It's like, my geography is pretty good, but I had no idea because nobody knew where Girona was. Looked at a map, went there, visited him, spent a couple of days, and I was with Nicole, and we were like, this is the place. And that was in August 2006. We moved then 3 months later, and we've been here ever since. And it's, it was very much a kind of, the quality of life here it's so different to the south of France or Tuscany. It's real. You know, the people, I mean, I'm not in a very real house at the moment, but they're lovely people. But that's, you get the mixture here.
So whose house are you in? Because we were talking about this the other day. We've got a mutual friend, friendish, that might be there. So you were saying to me the other day that the house that you're going to be in, where we're going to do this sort of interview conversation, is off the charts. And it kind of looks like you're sprouting two very ornate lampstands.
Just saw that now. I'll show you. I'll just, because this is a house in Catalonia, and it's a very traditional Catalan house, but inside it's like an English kind of wonderful, and the garden outside is just mind-boggling. But it's their friends that we've met, because it's not your classic expat community in Catalonia, especially northern Catalonia. It's people who tend to come here to escape. They tend to kind of embed and become much more local. And we crossed paths because my wife knew the family, and we started visiting and became this over 10 years ago. But we have a connection in that Shauna, who's the lady of the house, literally her ladyship, her brother is Max Wakefield, who's the son of Sir Humphrey.
Sir Humphrey Wakefield, who was quite instrumental helping me out in 2012 with some gold medals.
Yeah, and so that's an interesting story, which I think you've told my children loosely without kind of the names, but I found that amazing because I've been to, oh goodness, what's the name of the house?
Chillingham Castle. It's up in Northumberland.
Chillingham Castle.
It's meant to be the most haunted building in the UK. It's where William Wallace was holed up for a while. It's over 1,000 years old. So Humphrey bought it a number of years ago and has been renovating it to its original form, much to the utter distress and annoyance of National Heritage or whoever it is. They're at loggerheads all the
Trust,
time.
bro.
We love Sir Humphrey. He's fantastic.
I remember when I visited that castle, it was Max that was showing me around, Sir Humphrey's son, and he was showing me kind of, because kind of little relics, sort of just loosely around in places. And it's like, are they the boots that he wore when such and such war? And these are had these like, and it's kind of hoarding kleptomania brilliance. But there was that story of the 1927 Everest attempt. Was it that?
So Arthur Wakefield. So I forget exactly what the connection is. I think it might be Sir Humphrey's uncle. He was on the 1922 Everest attempt. He was a doctor in the First World War, and was one of the doctors on the 22 Everest expedition, and was actually awarded an Olympic gold medal for his, well, the whole team was, for their attempt on Everest back in 22. And it was one of those gold medals we got through Sir Humphrey that we took to the summit in 2012. In the year.
Yeah, it's an amazing story. I love that.
No,
so that's that weird connection with this house and the people that it's introduced me to and the things I've seen. So yeah, it's that's one of the great things. That takes back to the quality of life in Catalonia. Everything's a bit surreal.
Well, I don't know if it's surreal or whether it's meaningful relationships. So I think when you live somewhere where it is very wholesome and it is very honest and organic, those relationships that you build up there, they're not transparent, they're not transactional, they are deep, meaningful relationships. And certainly the times that I spent living in different places, and we get it a little bit in the Cotswolds here, you generate these friendships which, you know, have long-lasting memories and meaning to, which is, for me, you know, super important in pretty much everything I do.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, because I've been an expat my whole life. I've lived in 6 different countries and was born in Malta, came from parents much like that. My wife as well. And so I've always been quite reticent with the expat life when I was doing it, because what happens is you overbond with people from your country when you're in different countries, and often they're not necessarily real relationships. So it's quite nice when you get to, I'm actually going to say this stage in life where you want to stay in one place
you
and
can't
you're
say that
making those
because
decisions.
You're younger than me, so you can't say when you get to this stage in life. I think I've got 3 or 4 years on top of you yet. So it might be even more.
No, I'm pretty happy with this stage in life. I don't want to move around anymore. Don't want another house. I don't want to live anywhere else ever again. So I'm quite happy with being in this stage of life and thinking, well, this is where I'll be now. We'll be forever. I'm totally cool with that.
Now tell me, we were chatting to Joe Simpson, the author, mountaineer, last week, who doesn't climb anymore. And it was fascinating chatting to him about the climbing community and the impact that has had on his life. And now he doesn't have that. And he says, you know, he does miss it. It's almost impossible to replace. Now, you retired in what, 2013?
14 was my final year racing.
Okay, 2014.
Yeah.
Did you have the same feeling of loss? Well, was there a hole? I mean, beyond the training and the cycling. But I mean, what did you fill the void with? Yeah,
that's a very good question, because it was something asked to me in 2015, about halfway through the year, where I couldn't find traction anywhere in life, although I was doing different things, and it got to the point where I spoke to the wonderful doctor, psychiatrist, Steve Peters.
God, everybody raves about this guy. He's like the go-to guru. We're going to have to get him on the show.
He's like a guru. He's a wonderful man. And one of the first questions he said was, well, do you miss it? And I was like, no, I don't. And I said, I don't miss the racing. I definitely don't miss the racing or the training. He said, but do you miss it? And I said, okay, yeah, I do miss it. And he said, well, what do you miss? And I said, the camaraderie, the kind of the shared experience. And because this is what's great about him, he doesn't then delve into it. He said, well, that's a good answer, because that's something you can fix. Most people might have missed the focus, the training, the discipline, the results, the gratification, the glory, the fame and money. But if you miss the camaraderie, then you can fix that. What are you going to do about it? And that's when I was like, oh yeah, he's got a point. I have to build something that will build camaraderie. And it was a really interesting kind of realization. And I spoke to, appropriately. And so my teammates that I've stayed in touch with over the years, because professional cycling is a very weird sport. We don't generally, I've always said the paradoxical thing about professional cycling is that we are loners who become immersed in a team sport. And so we become team players, although fundamentally we're loner individuals. And that means that we don't have, like in rugby or football, that kind of idea where we celebrate after success or commiserate together in failure. We just leave and go home to our individual places, then meet back up at races again. It's a very kind of weird existence. There's my son in the background.
How do you deal with that psychologically? Because say, I mean, I'm making up. I mean, if you have a crushing defeat somehow in road racing or something happens, and then you just depart and go home, you just process that on your own? Because certainly within team sports, within climbing, you kind of process that together. Whereas, by the sounds of it, you were busy processing both victory and defeat, or losses, or whatever it may be, in terms of being an individual.
You know what? I think there's something quite. All of these things come down to situational experiences and the actual kind of discipline and the actual what's involved. So I think probably climbers are actually very much loners, very similar to professional cyclists. I do think that from knowing you and reading and films and meeting others and kind of analyzing a bit. The difference is when you're on a mountain and it doesn't go right, you've got a long time to get back down and then get to the airport. You're in that process time is enforced. And you're often at that point, you're not in the public eye still. So you get that time to deal with it internally, individually, and then slowly start to share it. It's quite a slow process for you guys, but you do manage to get it done. I think a lot of the time. Whereas us, the race finishes, we finished the race at 5 p.m. It could have been 5 p.m. could have been a 270k monument, or it could have been a 3-week stage race. Sometimes race will finish at 5, 6. You finish and then you're on the bus and you're racing to get your shit together to get in the car that's been taking you to the airport to get out of there.
Wow. And
then you won't even speak to people, and you'll speak to the press. So you're already at the press. So the media, you'll speak to the media before you speak to your team, your teammates. And then you'll be speaking to your wife or partner or your coach before your teammates. Because sometimes your teammates who've worked so hard for you all day, if you're a leader, they're not going to come in until you're way after you're done and wrapped up, retrained, showered, and are almost about to leave. So they'll be turning up, getting their shit together. After you've done all your media responsibilities, then you're out. And so it's a very kind of, that is probably a cultural problem we have within the sport, is that type of behavior. Because it means that we're never truly unified. And it does actually explain a lot of the issues we have with unionization and solidarity, and actually being almost, whereas we should be the key players. I say we, Christ, I still say that. Professional cyclists should be the key players within the business of professional cycling. They're actually the circus animals.
It's quite interesting. I think there are parallels. A friend of mine once said that, he was talking about the British Mountain Guides, and said he's never been part of an association of such amazing individuals who actually belong and are beholden to an amateur association. And it sounds like you're trying to say a similar sort of thing. I do. And I think also, just going back to your original points on the camaraderie, I think it's how I handled that. And it was that case of the realization of being a loner, but actually that had been built into me. And also what I did recognize was so much of the gratification I'd taken from my sport had been the shared experience, not the finite result, not the number that's on the result sheet or on the internet. It was the stories you could share with the people that were on that same sheet.
or even not someday. Well, you get a DNF, but that's a really interesting one, because I think very much in the modern day, especially, we get wrapped up in that idea where we judge our accomplishments on the number rather than the journey it took and the kind of the experiences we shared to get to there. Because sometimes being number one on that sheet is going to be a much more boring story than the person who came 70th or even 5th or 8th. And I've always been a big fan and believer in this. The stories we tell afterwards are what make it important. And you can't tell stories unless you've got people you shared it with.
No, and I think that's very true. I mean, a lot of people ask me about why I don't do some of the big climbs solo. Because some of the big mountains you can go on your own, and you can. I'm not about that. I like those shared experiences. I like being able to share a beer or a cup of coffee and going over what we've just achieved or not achieved. And that's where I find the richness.
And you know what? That's really, because it's, I mean, I don't know how you feel about these films as such, but I watched Dawn Wall relatively recently. And one of the most powerful moments in that film was when he decided that it was going to mean less to him if he went to the top on his own, rather than kind of going back down and doing it with his climbing partner. And I was like, well, yeah, that's exactly why you do it, isn't it? And it's great to hear you say that as well, because I think and that's something that's very good for I think aspiring athletes or anything, or anybody who's going to go and try these crazy things. Try and find somebody who's willing to do it with you, because in one way or another, and because that's where you'll get the true experience, because that's when the human condition kicks in, and you'll learn more about yourself by understanding how you react in those situations with somebody else than you ever would by doing it on your own. So yeah, camaraderie is important.
Yeah, I think it's super, and I think something that sums it up really well, it was the Copenhagen road race, the World Championship road race, one that Cavendish famously won, because you were, what was it, road captain? Was that the term?
Road captain, yeah. It was the first time we'd ever had a team. It was the first time we'd ever had a team good enough to even have enough people to captain.
But the lovely thing I love about it is because it had been earmarked for a couple of years, and then it was planned meticulously. You guys executed it beautifully, and then the lead out guy, I forget who the lead out guy was, comes around the corner, and certainly the commentary that I was listening to, they lose Cavendish in the melee, and then Cavendish
it was Ian Stannard and Geraint.
Yeah,
and it wasn't that they did it almost bang on, but it's racing.
Yeah, no, of course.
And it seemed that it was lost.
Yeah, and it was and the commentator gets really anxious. He's like, oh my god, he's looking over his shoulder, he can't find Cameron. All of a sudden, like, he comes zooming out somewhere else. But the reason why I bring this up is because he gets across the line, he realizes he's won, and then the emotional release is when he starts hugging the team members, the people that made it happen. And that I found arguably the most powerful part of that whole thing. The group of individuals, because you were all riding for different teams at the time, and you've come together and you've pulled off something which has been in the planning for, it's longer than 2 years, I think. As soon as it was Copenhagen, Team GB.
Yeah, in hindsight, I mean, we knew at the time what we were doing was special, because I was pretty close to Rod Ellingworth, who was the mastermind behind it all. We knew Mark is Mark. Yeah. He's one of these true outliers. He's they come along probably once every 2 or 3 generations. And the kind of stars were aligning. The stars were aligning to the degree that we had, over those previous few years, we were growing this depth of talent, which could deliver Mark. And that was the perfect storm. So all the logistics that were happening, everything that was happening. Because if you look back on it now, 3 of the domestiques in that team have since won the Tour de France.
Wow.
It was like we had Brad Wiggins, Chris Froome, and Geraint Thomas, and they were kind of there to help Mark. And then me with all my experience, and then there was the perfect storm in the sense that they hadn't hit. They still considered me to be the boss.
Yep.
Because I had much more success than them apart from Mark. So I had that influence, and which was great because I was pretty fearless about how we would, and I had absolute trust and belief. I was rooming with Mark, so we were sharing a room in the week beforehand.
Yeah.
And I had absolute commitment to the cause and how we were going to ride it. And we were going to do something that nobody had ever done before, which was ride from the start to the finish. Because normally in a professional road race, it's a 6.5 hour race and it's on circuits, and there's a certain system that will take place. There'll be a flurries of attacks, first half an hour, 45 minutes, break will go, people will sit up, they'll go for the call of nature, we'll let the gap go out, teams will then kind of discuss, you'll start all the teams going together like the captain mafioso and kind of figure out how we're going to share this workload to bring it back to economize our teams, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas that day, it was like, we're going to let a break go, but not much.
Yeah.
So we were already at the front controlling stuff. We weren't just going to let the race go free rein. And then when a break did start to go, just not the normal type of break, because I think it was pretty small. Normally it would be double figures. We went single digits. And I then was like, okay, we'll let it get to about 2 or 3 minutes, and then we're going to start riding. And we'll still let it go at 5 minutes. But I hadn't told a lot of the team what we were going to do. I told Rod because I didn't want them to get worried.
Yeah.
And so Jez Hunt, who is one of my oldest pro cycling mates and friends, who was bodyguarding Mark, he came up to me when the break had gone and we kind of decided. And he said, right, I'm going to stop for a piss with Mark. And I said, Jez, not today. I remember still thinking, and that then set the tone in the whole team. We're not doing anything that anyone expects today.
Yeah.
And we're going to ride this. And I'd even told Bradley Wiggins that he wasn't going to, we'd let him ride from about halfway, because he was like, there's no way I can ride the last 2 or 3 laps. I can't do that, because he still didn't know he could do it. So I told, even the team meeting, he'd been briefed, and I briefed him that he would start riding about 120 Ks and go to about 180, 200, then pull out or do what he could.
Yeah.
And I kept holding him back to like 220 Ks, 230 Ks, 240. So then he did almost the last lap on his own. Yeah. And it was just this perfect, wonderful kind of thing. And, and it all worked out. And Mark then, just going back to what you said, I was with Jez Hunt, who I've known since the late 90s. And we'd both been dropped. Our work was done on the last lap. And there was this big screen where there's like thousands of people watching it in a field. And so the race was gone, and we knew the team was doing its job delivering Mark. Yeah. And it was in the last lap. We got off our bikes and climbed over the barrier.
Oh, no.
And we're in our full kit, in like our full skin suits, and climbed into the kind of the melee of people. And we're just watching the screen. And exactly what we watched unfold, what you were just talking about, was Ian and G going through the corner and losing Mark, or Mark losing them in the melee. And we were like, and we were genuinely, I still have goosebumps now, because I was like, it's gone. And then Mark did something that only Mark could do. And if anyone wants to Google the 2011 Copenhagen World Championships,
it's epic.
Go and look at it and watch what he does in those last 500 meters. Only Mark Cavendish could do it. He goes through a gap about this big, crosses the barriers, squeezes through, does this nut sprint, and just pulls it off. And that's where the euphoria was, because we'd done everything perfect for 6.5 hours, probably 6 hours, 40 minutes. And it was only in that last 1 minute, 30 seconds, where it was only thanks to Mark Cavendish magic that he won it. And then we won it. But all of us were like, well, you won that.
But you say that, but then I talk about this a bit in the corporate world, is having that depth within the team. And when there are the hiccups, those unexpected hiccups, you got the perfect plan and it was all beautifully coming together. Then there was something you just could not overly predict. Mark lost the wheel, he jumped somebody else's wheel, but he's got the experience that he needed to pull it off. So, yeah, I think, it's, as you say, I get goosebumps. I remember watching it. I think it's just utterly epic.
Yeah, we got so much. And it's interesting what you say, because it's something that there's a book that I need to read, which I've been recommended, There's actually this wonderful guy called Phil Gilbert, who's the head of design at IBM. A really interesting man. There's a book called Captain's Cool, and it's about how you look through the 20th century, the greatest sporting teams, and often people will talk about the manager, the kind of, or the coach, or such and such, or the narrative history of the team and the culture they had. But actually, if you go through to all of them, those hyper successful teams, there was one person within that team that was driving that success. And I think we've just had on Netflix recently the Last Dance, the Michael Jordan one, and you kind of see how so often in teams you have that, and I think it happens in corporates, it happens everywhere. There's this key person who's just this force of nature driving things forward, and it can be done in different ways at different levels and in different styles. But I honestly don't. If you don't have that one bit of magic dust, it's very hard to do it. But then you need to build the team around that. That's where it becomes really complicated, and to kind of maintain it.
Yeah, but
so it's always multi-level, all these things.
But your magic dust needs to be someone that you can work with. Because if that individual is somebody that potentially grates or and I'm a huge fan of Steve Jobs, and you can see in certain parts of his life he had to temper his attitude or his way that he would do things. At the same time, he was that cohesive genius that built what we know now as Apple, the famous part in the film, when Woz says, but nobody knows, when they're talking about the capacitor and he said, but I know, and that's what matters. But
and I think and I think if we kind of, you can get mixed up in the lexicon. When it's a captain's call, it doesn't mean you're the captain or the leader or the scorer or the forward or the kind of, there's always that one person that's the Steve Jobs, or even with Dave Brailsford with the success of the British Olympic team, cycling team, then Sky and Ineos. There's always that kind of that one kind of person. Yeah, often it can be defined as somebody within the team. So use Michael Jordan, but it's really interesting when you go and find and look for that kind of and then use that as inspiration, as kind of to then work it within your team and give people the confidence to do that, because they're probably unicorns. They're not very many of them, but it's a very great concept to think of. Yeah.
So it's interesting, you mentioned Wiggins and Cavendish. I was reading something the other day about Paul Smith, and I know you're quite a big Paul Smith fan. He said that the top 5 stylish riders of the modern generation, it was you, number 1. Then there was, I think there's Wiggins with his sort of the whole sort of mod style thing going on. But he also cites Cavendish. Coming from a nation that we're not always deemed to be that stylish, 3 of the top 5 in Paul Smith's eyes, most stylish cyclists were from the UK.
Yeah,
hey, how are
most
you?
Stylish one. This is Maxine.
Hey, Maxine.
Kenton.
Have you been swimming?
Yeah. Have you been swimming? Yes, you have.
I can tell by your hair you've been swimming.
You sit there, that's fine. Yeah, I mean, it goes, I mean, Paul Smith, I have nothing but admiration for many reasons, because I find him quite a big inspiration, not just fashion, but just how he is with design and his business. I mean, he still owns 70% of his business, which I find in this modern age where people do everything to flip, they do everything on fashion, they do it, they judge their concept of... Mummy's taking Maxine away.
Oh, don't go, Maxine. Come back.
With Paul Smith, I sat down with him in October last year and interviewed him about it, because he's got this brilliant he's got a brilliant value system. Oh, I see if I remember some of the quotes. It was, don't do things that are easy, do things that are right. And you kind of, which is such a lovely kind of, just as one of them. Yeah. And he's got this lovely kind of 4 different little quotes that he lives by, that the business then lives by as well. And you go and meet him, and he's clearly a polymath, and he's all over the place. He's lovely, but actually deep down, beyond all that quirky Paul Smith that we see, the kind of the front-facing, public-facing, is a pretty hardcore, ruthless businessman. who's built that company. And I find that interesting because it's the way he can flip and change, and his absolute belief that he's not doing this for money. He's doing this to do things that he thinks are good and right. And even his business, granted, he's pretty hardcore, but I think there's something quite lost in the modern world of business, that idea that you build a company and you respect the people within it, and you and the things you do are right, rather than just following the trends and doing things that are easy.
And has that had an influence on your own company, Chapter 3? Because obviously, I mean, I got some of your clothing, and it's got that style. It's got the David Millar style to it. It's got upturned cuffs. It's got beautiful little buttons on the jersey on the neck, which no one else has. It's got your own, your own little trademark bits to it, which I love. And has that come from your knowledge or your time with Paul Smith? Those little things.
You know what, Chapter 3 has been a real journey for me, and it goes back into what you were saying before, because when our career as a professional cyclist has a very finite end, we don't have many options because we don't have a culture that enables transition. I'd even go as far as saying the word rehabilitation, of kind of shifting back into the real world that we don't even know about. It's very different to many other sports where and that goes back to what I was saying, the paradoxical nature of it, where we're loners, we're generally expats, we then end up in a team sport, and it's very working class sport. Well, it was until recently, where it's become quite middle class in the last 10, 15 years, but before it was very much a working class sport. And by the very nature of being a working class sport, meant there wasn't any corporate culture to transition and help or enable the athletes to kind of have a future life.
Yeah.
So that does still exist, which means when a professional cyclist finishes, either you go and work for a team or a former sponsor, or you actually reboot your whole life. So I decided to kind of do a mix of the two, and with Chapter 3, and we call it Chapter 3 because I didn't want to create a brand that had my name in it. Because I just thought, well, for starters, I'm like Marmite. So you don't want a brand that a lot of people are going to hate, but some people are going to love. So we thought with Chapter 3, it would be something that would also enable us to slowly have me in the background. And then also it enables us to go into different sectors within the industry, because at the moment we are a cycling brand, but with, as you said, the cuffs and the different things, that was the initial iteration was just to do something fundamentally different from professional cycling apparel. The cycling apparel tech, which is all very simplistic and very similar. Yeah. So it was a differentiation. And then over time, it's becoming very much, and then part of the formation of the company was this idea that I wanted to build that camaraderie, build that team of people. So taking off that Steve Peters message, where he said, "What are you doing about it?" And I was like, "Nothing." He said, "Well, probably do something about it." So Chapter 3 became that, and it's build a company. And so I've learned over these first 5 years is that the brand becomes the fruition of the people in the company. And because we're not building a flip business, anybody who is involved in Chapter 3 knows that I'm doing this forever. This is legacy. It now. And it's a legacy project, and it's just because I think, and that's the inspiration from Paul Smith. If I'm going to do it, I'm not going to do things that are easy. I'm going to do things that are right. We're not going to go and just go and try and leverage ourselves and probably lie about the cash we need and get investments and sell equity, and because I don't think that's true. And especially in industry right now, everything's unknown. There's a great Danish proverb. I love this. It's I don't do predictions because it's very hard to know what's going to happen in the future. and this is and never more has that been true now. And I think with Chapter 3, I want to build a company that can withstand huge disruption. That can morph and change and slowly become and grow into what I truly believe its potential is, which is to become a beautiful brand that a lot of people will know and can do lots of different things and start to become much more inclusive and cater for all types of cycling, road, commuting, mountain biking, gravel, and then be able to do running gear and gym wear and stuff like that. And, you know, and a brand that you'd like to wear as a t-shirt and not feel like a total geek.
Right.
So, you know, it's that kind of idea.
I'm waiting for your jeans. I can see the Chapter 3 jeans coming out, because Chapter 3 does seem to fit me quite well. And I struggle getting jeans to fit sometimes. So I'm hanging out for the Chapter 3 jeans.
Man, I should introduce you to Patrick Grant. He does brilliant jeans.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So there's one thing I just wanted, you made me think about it there. I think it was JFK, Kennedy, when he was giving the speech about they're going to put a man on the moon. So this was 1961, I think this was. And he said, we're going to put a man on the moon, not because it's easy, but because it is hard. And I think there's a lot of, not kudos in that, but there's a lot of learning in that. I think in this day and age, many people are looking for the simple hack to get from where they are to become successful in whatever way that is, that success. And that hack doesn't really exist. You've got to put the groundwork in. You've got to do it because it is hard.
I'm so pleased you said that, because I see it over and over again, and I do listen to a lot of different podcasts and read things, and I see this kind of this language of the hack. And all of the people who've accomplished great things, they didn't hack anything. No. It just took a fucking long time.
Yeah, hard work.
You know, and it's learning, and it's trying to work these things out for yourself. And Jerry, so this is one of the things, what was Chapter 3, and just, I suppose, with this process, do things that are right, not that are easy. Yeah, it's really hard, but by it being really hard, you have to learn, and you challenge yourself, and you challenge the relationships around you, and it forces you to kind of confront issues and learn or change, adapt, and over time you get better. Not just better at what you're doing, but better at what you know you're capable of doing, and finding the right people to do the other things. And that was always my thing. If we were to, all these companies I see that get us investment, and we see all these things, well, what are you doing with that? You're just hiring other people to do it. You're not actually learning how to do it. And I suppose it's been like you with climbing and everything we've done with professional cycling. It was very much autodidact, learning on the ground, making mistakes. I mean, you had that huge fall when you were young, where you broke both your ankles and smashed yourself up. Yeah. You know, that was a grave mistake.
Yeah, it was
but it taught you something. Yeah, but it taught you something. And it's the same. And I think if you don't and sometimes making those big mistakes are the greatest learning exercises. And if you don't open yourself up to the challenge of failure, then you're never going to get the best out of yourself. And I think the idea of hacking means you're trying to avoid failure. And I'm not a big fan of that. I think you have to trip up, you have to crash, you have to, in our world of sport, you're going to break bones, you're going to get cut up, you're going to go to hospital. Now that's equal in business. You're going to lose employees, you're going to lose funds, you're going to have to go bankrupt, you're going to make mistakes, but eventually by doing that, you'll learn how to do it right. But it's I'm trying not to teach my kids hacks, let's put it that way.
And is that resilience? Is having a resilience? I mean, David Goggins, the ex-US Navy SEAL, come ultra athlete, he speaks quite eloquently. Well, he doesn't speak eloquently at all. He's like, but he talks about this a lot. He said, if he puts his mind to doing something, he will do it. It won't be today or tomorrow or the next day or the next day, but every single time he does it, he's getting that little bit closer because he's learning each time. And eventually he will have the knowledge base, or he calls it the cookie jar of experience that will eventually allow him to achieve whatever it is that he's set his mind to. But you know, he's not quite.
There's an amazing, which I'll recommend. Another thing here is a person I met last year, become a friend, Mikael B. Rasmussen. He's a business anthropologist, was an economist before, and he wrote a book called The Moment of Clarity. And it's about this idea of the ability of the human brain and its plasticity and the amount of memories we make. Because the moment we're a very hacking, algorithmic culture, where what's the quickest way to get to the end point? Now that gives you a solution. Is it the right solution? Well, yeah, for a machine it is, but not for a human. Because what we do is actually, in order to normally, the best solutions are found by it just bounces around for ages in our head, going through all different past experiences. And that's why we always say, well, go for a walk, have a good night's sleep, give it a bit of time. Because what it does, it then goes into your subconscious and goes through all your past experiences and comes up with a solution that a machine could never do. Because it will go by not only the past failures, it will go through past things you've forgotten about, that you witnessed, conversations you've had, and it will come up with what you then define as the moment of clarity. Well, you can't define how you came up with it, but it actually was built on all these different experiences you had. And you're like, well, that's the thing. That's how we do it. And it's an amazing thing that the human brain has, but it only happens if you allow it to have that amount of stored, those inputs. And then go through those relationships and those things.
I think it probably needs the inputs, but also the space, because we are bombarded today by so much distraction that it's really hard to focus on what it is we're doing. I mean, the term you mentioned about going out on a walk and having the thoughts, there's a term for it, peripatetic. I think it was Nietzsche said, all great thoughts come from walking, because you give yourself that space. There's no distraction. Yeah. Whereas today, it's like we're bombarded constantly. And the things which are new are not always relevant. And I think that moment of clarity, as you said, and it's interesting. What I end up doing, I normally come up with an idea and then go all the way around the houses to prove to myself that idea is a crap idea. And only when I've exhausted all the reasons why I shouldn't do it, I end up then acting on it. And so it's like almost a reverse psychology, but it kind of, the number of times I go back to the original thought, having tried every avenue to disprove it to myself.
That's interesting. That's because you have different psychology and different experience, because when you see a challenge, you have to confront the failure first, because the failure's got such gravitas. Whereas for me, it's like, I'm going to lose some skin. It's like, I'll go. It's like, I'll blow up and just like, or I'll just break a collarbone. It's not like I'm going to plummet and die. Yeah. So there's the kind of, so you see what I mean? But you need all those different sort of types of attitudes. And that's where it's interesting. The more you get into, to see how people tackle their kind of problems or issues, and the manner in which they go for it. And you're going to have those that go head first, and those that will actually take a step back. And that's not to say that neither are wrong. It's how you've always done it. Yeah. Now, I mean, I've got to do that. I've been trying to tee it up for a little while, and I'm going to embarrass you here, because you're on about losing some skin or some stitches. I think we've got some video that we might be able to show of you crushing your manhood on your crossbar of your bike when you had a chain failure. Yeah. And I've got to do it because I love this, and it sums you up so well. The bike biff of all times. And you've broken a chain, and I think, have we got the clip? But the reason why I love it so much is you hoy this bike away, and only you can walk away with it with such disgust that you don't even look at the damn thing. Yeah. It's like, see ya, and you walk away. I think it's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Yeah. But it was an insane day. I mean, to put it in perspective, because everyone knows about power now, I think I averaged nearly, what do they call that? I can't remember. So if you take out the zeros, like 350 for nearly 5 hours that day watts. Wow. Just on the pedals. That's removing the zeros. It had been a huge day, but I was just on this flyer, and it was stage 5 or 6 of the Giro d'Italia. And I knew I was going to win. You have days like that. It's called those magic days. And I made the decision about 20, 30 kilometers from the end that I wasn't going to attack solo, that I could win the sprint, no issue. So I wasn't going to take any risks with a long attack, because sometimes they're harder to gauge. So I thought I'll win the sprint. And so I was all ready to win the sprint, and I was covering all the attacks in the final. And in one of the moves where I was chasing somebody, I felt my chain kink. And I was like, oh, that's weird. And I had it in a big ring, and we're going uphill, and I had it nearly all the way to the left, which was my mistake, but I had it 3 down, just waiting for the next move, because they all knew they had to beat me because I beat them in the sprint. So just before 1 kilometer to go, the final big attack came from this guy called Pavel Brut. And I watch the three guys who are with me kind of react, because I thought, right, once I go from now on, I'm gonna have to do the whole last K and take it all the way to the line. So I was gonna wind up really big. And I started winding up, and then boom, chain snapped. And I went smack down, and I was so angry. But I tell you what was amazing, because I had all that stored energy to win. So I was like, I was gonna win. So I was just like, everything was pumping. And I just like stepped off and just threw the bike as hard as I could. And it went boom, 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 boom over the barriers. I'd never be able to repeat it ever again. I don't think because I was wet, and I was in cleats. And
it's fabulous, and it happens to all of us. I mean, I've thrown climbing boots away and ice axes in disgust when I get let, and especially when it's out of your control.
The best bit was, Kenton, was that once it had gone, because the peloton was like 3 minutes behind us, I suddenly realised I was standing in the middle of the road without a bike, and I was just like, and I was like, oh, now what do I do? And then some fan came and brought it and put it back over. Oh. And I kind of like, and they gave it back to me, and I was like, I think I threw it down on the floor again. And I was just like so petulant. But in the moment, I'd released all the anger in the throw. And then from that moment on, I was like, now I look like an idiot, don't I?
I mean, that's so awesome. It's caught on film. We had a very similar thing on the top of Choi Oya. I was there with a client, and the idea was to ski down. So it would have been the first British and the first Australian ski descent of an 8,000 meter peak. And for whatever reason, we get to the top, and my client had an issue with his skis. And the same thing, he just picks up one of the skis and he like throws it like a javelin, virtually off the summit. And his little Sherpa comes up, he goes and picks it up and brings it back and gives it to the client who's known as Big Daddy. Gives it back to Big Daddy. He said, I really didn't want that back, but thank you. And then he had to carry them back down. The insult to injury, he's carried these skis all the way up, and then he's got to carry them all the way back down, not be able to ski. It's like, oh God, I just can't make it up. Couldn't make it up.
It's brilliant.
Now,
at least mine's on film.
I'm very conscious of your time. You're with friends, but there's a few things I just want to touch upon. Your books, Racing Through the Dark and The Racer, I think, and in personal opinion, I think they are some of the best reads I've ever done, because they're so honest. And I've never asked you this. Did you write those yourself? Is that David Millar?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you. With Racing Through the Dark, Jeremy Whittle helped me at the beginning. He came on as a mentor, an editor. And the first bit he helped with, and because I wrote 140,000 words for Racing Through the Dark.
Wow. That's a lot.
And
I had that's like double the size.
Yeah, and it ended up being edited down to 120. But the great thing with Jeremy was, and I had, because I love books, bloody love books, and I knew if I was going to do it, I was going to write it myself, but I couldn't write it on my own, that first book. So Jeremy helped me and was such a key influence. Some of the bits he did properly helped me the writing. But actually, the last 2/3 of the book I wrote almost completely myself. But he was an instrumental figure in that. Well, then The Racer I wrote completely on my own with a great editor called Ian Priest. Uh-huh. So what, as you say, probably 99% of sports biographies, and probably 99.9 are ghostwritten.
Yeah.
But mine were essentially. But I always like to reference Jeremy for Racing Through the Dark, because I wouldn't be able to do it without him.
Well, I mean, not only are they ghostwritten, but they're very formulaic. And I think, especially The Racer, it's not a archetypal sports book. And that's what I love about it. And it's so, like you are normally, it's so eloquently written. The language is so rich. I think it's absolutely fabulous.
Thank you. The Racer is it's a much more complex book, and it's got it's very segmentalized, and it was probably more built, because I thought if I don't write these things down now, I'll forget them. And so glad I did, because there's the Team Time Trial chapter and the Welter chapter, and these things that I had to get down, otherwise I'd never remember them. And I'm so glad I did that. It was pretty hard to do, but I'm so pleased I did that. And so thank you very much, because I was told when I did Racing Through the Dark by my literary agent, David Luxton, there has to be something that 15 years from now you'll be proud to have on the shelf. And so it took me 3 years to even begin writing it after I'd signed the deal. Huh. So I was like, Yeah.
So you say you love books. What are you reading right now? What's been lockdown highlights in terms of literature?
To be perfectly frank, I haven't been reading almost anything because life just seems flat out and never have those quiet moments. I've got a book that I'd recommend to everybody, and this is one of my favorite books from last year. It's a book called The Power of Moments by Chip and Dan Heath, which is about kind of how we define life, and the kind of it's also based on science, but it's such a beautiful book on what life's about and how we kind of frame it. So that would be my one key book, and that's probably even more important to read now during this period, is because you'll be going through it, and we hear stories about people having dreams and powerful dreams at the moment and memories. Well, at the moment it's very difficult to make memories because there's not much interaction going on apart from the fortunate few of us that have children and have space to do things with them. The majority don't. So yeah, Power of Moments, Chip and Dan Heath. I recommend that. Other than that, I'm not actually reading much at the moment.
Now, it's really interesting you say about the difficulty in making memories right now, because it's a little bit like Groundhog Day. The days do kind of morph into one. I hadn't really given that much foresight, to be honest. We do have. We have a habit of doing beginning and endings to things, and so first-time experiences are most powerful, and experiences that we do where have a strong ending we remember. But as you say, at the moment it's cyclical, and there's no real beginning and end to it, which means although we'll remember the sentiment of the pandemic period, it's quite hard for us, unless you've experienced COVID-19 directly. It's going to be a bit of a blur for everybody. Interesting.
Yeah, weird.
Really interesting. Right, so we got to bring this ship home at some stage. We've got to put it to bed. And you've got some rosé wine to drink in the sun down in Girona, I suspect. So we don't quite know what's going to happen moving forward. But what, given an ideal world, what does the next 6 months for DM look like? I mean, are you back into Chapter 3 full time, or have you got some other side projects on the go?
No, it's Chapter 3 almost all in. I mean, in the sense this has been a very positive experience for us, I think, in the sense kind of consolidating and seeing everything's become a bit more raw. Cycling commentary and that side of things is a total unknown. So I can't even say, because that's always my other life. Family, I've got with my friend doing my off-bike podcast and things like that. But otherwise, it's Chapter 3 all in, you know, and I love it. I love the kind of challenge of it all. So that's the big one at the moment, and probably will be for a very long time.
And looking at your social media, your sort of uphill races with your wife, the running races, I'm guessing that's, you've retired from your international running status.
Yeah. I'm having a break because I did this up Rock and Corba, this local mountain in January, and I buggered my back, and I've basically been on pause ever since. The pause has turned into a stop. It's like shit. She's a weapon, my wife. So it's a kind of I need to do sport. I'm not doing any at the moment, and I need to get back into it. I need a challenge, Kenton. I need a focus point.
You don't want to speak to me, otherwise your wife's never going to speak to me again. I'm going to drag you off to some. But that I sent you the picture of that road in Tibet. That paved road in Tibet, that looked amazing. I'll try and get a picture and post it on social media so the viewers can see. But that, you know, perhaps
I need a performance focus point to get me to actually do anything. Because just subsistence training doesn't do it for me.
So I was going to say, are you one of those people that do you need a focus to be able to put purpose into your training? Well, not into life, but into training.
No, into training. Yeah, I think I'm for life as well. Just need to have that kind of what is the focus point, and then I can do the day to day. But if I don't have that focus point, I'm kind of like, I won't really do it. So although I can be hyper focused and super like driven and ambitious, I'm actually also quite lazy if I don't have a clearly defined reason to do something.
I find that very hard to believe. I was doing some background reading the other day, and it was talking about when you were an amateur in France and you were seamlessly winning all the races. almost without effort. So I think there's clearly a natural talent underneath that rather calm demeanour of yours. And you've cheated because you used the term before me, but you are the archetypal dark weapon that would rock up at the start line and devastate the field without really trying.
I was very lucky to be hit with the genetic gifted stick for cycling. So it's kind of, but yeah, it's, I learned to last year doing the New York Marathon. I was like, if I had that objective, then I'll do it. But otherwise.
Oh, you crushed that. There was a sub 3 hour. What was that? Like 2 hours 48 or something? What did you do?
No, I did 2:58.
Oh, 2:58.
So I buggered up pacing and stuff, but I was still happy for that because I just wanted sub 3 hours. And then I wanted to go like 2:45 for London this year. That was my kind of super goal. And then put it to bed and then just never do a marathon again. Thankfully, London Marathon got called off.
Lucky
so
you.
Yeah. I know. I'm like, oh, not my fault.
Lucky you. Listen, David.
Yeah, no.
I gotta say, you got the 3 children there. You got the wife. You got friends. I'm going to let you go. I'm just going to leave it on this note that I've always had you in super high esteem as a racer and now as a friend. And I do mean this. Thank you for coming on the show. We do this because we're trying to keep the Barn Theatre open, and I know you have a vested interest in the arts and culture. So thank you for being part of it. And the other thing I want to say is I've always thought that you were one of the unsung heroes of cycling. I don't think you really quite got the credit when you were racing for what you did. I think you've had an amazing career, and I totally love what you're doing now with Chapter 3. So for me, just keep on rocking, just keep on doing what you're doing, because we all love it and we love you for it. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Kenton. It means an enormous amount coming from you, and always a pleasure to talk to you.
Right. Brilliant. Well,
all right.
Go and have fun with the children. Go swimming, drink your wine, the beer, whatever it is. Peace, man, and we see you soon. Right, well, that was David Millar. What can you say about that? God, I just didn't really know where that was going to go. He is you probably picked up on it. He is a hero. I mean, the first time I ever clapped eyes on him is when I was living in France, and the Tour de France pretty much came past my house. And I remember going out to watch it, and he was having a shocker of a day and was about 40 minutes off the peloton, struggling through the darkness, that pain cave that he was in. And it's the first time I ever clapped eyes on him. And now I feel very lucky to say that he's a friend of mine. And wow, that was everything that I hoped it might be. He's a deep thinker. I think there's some gems in there that we can all pull out. I'll try to get the bike throw up somehow on a link, or hit me up on social, and I'll post it on social. It is pure cycling gold, the David Millar bike throw. But let's not forget what we're doing this for. All this content is free for your enjoyment during lockdown and hopefully after lockdown. But please, if you have the inclination, go onto the Barnes Theatre. This is Save Our Barn, and please, please, please make a donation to the cause to try to keep this wonderful local theatre open. So that's Save Our Barn. Now, next week, this is something that we've got lined up for you. I'm blown away that he said yes. He's another legend hero that I've had the pleasure of coming into contact with in the past. It is the American climber who found George Mallory's body back in '99, I think it was. He summited the Everest without oxygen. He was the team leader for the North Face athlete team for the best part of about 15 years. He's the instigator of the Khumbu Climbing Center in Nepal. This guy's accolades go on and on and on. Next week, we have none other than Conrad Anker. Wow, this guy is off the chart. His fire within him is never ending. He's been at the top of the game for about 3-4 decades. And he's still pulling up new routes. He's still mentoring the young spunkers out there. I am so stoked to be talking to Conrad next week. We're going to be talking about the current plight of Nepal and the DCI Foundation, our friend Ben Ayres, and that is next week, same place, same time, cool conversations. But for now, have a fab week, and thank you, David Millar.